Welcome, 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 we will be belt. Welcome to the Golden Belt. Who vets lose? It's our 14th podcast. Beatrice Selby, we see you there. We see you there, Beatrice, on YouTube. Good to see so many of you joining the live stream this afternoon. Let us know how you guys are receiving us out there. We got two special gentlemen will be joining us today. We're talking about the corrupt PPP, the Sharon Hicks affair, the permanent secretary Sharon Hicks affair, among other issues we're going to be touching on today. So good to see Beatrice Selby joining us right away on the YouTube and all the other folks who are going to be joining us across social media. Good to see each and every one of you. What are you guys having for lunch today? What are you guys having for lunch? And how is the weather where you are? Good to have so many of you fantastic folks who join us daily for our podcast below that. We can't do it without you guys. We cannot do this without you. The podcast is only special because you guys are here. All of the regulars, y'all know yourselves. Y'all know yourself. All of the regulars. Y'all know yourselves. Good to have you guys on the live stream. Good to have each and every one. Kim Clark, I see you there. George Annan. Bali Clark, we see you too. All the Clarks are on the live stream this afternoon. All the Clarks are on the podcast. Tessa, Isaac Spirzani, good to see you joining us. Tessa, we are privileged again, guys, as you guys show up, show after show, podcast after podcast. Dan Britain, good to see you out there. And Beatrice says it is warm in Queens. It is warm in Queens, and she's having a light lunch. Beams. Sharon too young to know his beams. And Christopher Jones, who's going to be joining us, the opposition chief, with too young to know his beams. Beams means please a son. That's a secret I got. Beams. And I said, no beams, it means don't bet me. I hear you. Juliet Stewart, good to see you, Juliet Stewart, and Enid Elliott, Alexis Arthur, and Michael Gittins. I see Chamisha or Thomasina Ben is joining us. Marsha Batiste. Gloria Chester, Carol Williams, how are you guys doing there? I see Rudyard is here. Rudyard McPherson, there was a famous poet with that name, Rudyard Kipling was the name of that poet. Rudyard Kipling. It's good to see you there, Rudyard McPherson. And all you other fantastic, beautiful folks. As you come on, guys, why don't you show us those emojis and let us know how you guys are feeling out there. We want to see those emojis. And guys, take the opportunity to share the live stream as well. Well, folks, everybody dressed back. Alia Waldron just show up. Alia Waldron just show up. Dress back, dress back. Alia says the sound sounds far away. And we're going to try to improve that. We are going to try to improve that at our end. She says the sound sounds far away. Again, we are going to try to improve that. We want no problems with Alia. And so we're going to try to rectify any sound issues that we have. Ali says the sound sounds far away. But we want to I'm going to try to correct that. ASAP, ensuring that you get the sound that you need. We want no problems. We don't want no problems at all. So let's try to pull up the sound a little bit and see if that improves. Try to pull up the sound there just for Ali. You know, those folks who went to school in Guyana, especially the secondary school years with the boom boom buses, you know, the parents told us our hearing will going to be affected. Our hearing will be affected. We didn't take them seriously with the boom boom buses. Right? Deborah Fraser wants to know how I sound as though I'm talking from the gate. Folks, let's try to rectify that. The technicians are going to help me to try to rectify the sound, and we're going to fix it because we want good sound. Good sound. Good sound. So the guys are going to work on that, and we're going to try to see how we can rectify that. They are working on it even now. Even now, they are working on it. We want to get the sound right. But good to see all of you. Good to see you. Good to see all of you. right? I see Ali's asking a lot of questions there, and we're gonna try to get those issues sorted out. Guys, we're gonna see if we can improve the sound at our end. We try to put up the audio a little bit, and we see what we can do at our end. Guys, bear with us as we try to get the sound right, and then we're gonna move from there. Hold on, let's try to get the sound right. Let's try to get our sound right. We want proper sound. All right. Is that better? I move from the gate now. I move from the gate. Are you guys making that a better now? Marsha Glasgow, I move from the gate. Pam Hall and Mark Allman, uh, Christopher Gill says he can hear us. Marsha says too much echoes. Stacy and Stoll, good to see you. Stacy and Stoll, good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see all of you. Guys, take the opportunity now as we have started the song out a little better. Good to see each and every one of you. Guys, we're talking about the Sharon Hicks story, the Sharon Hicks scandal, the Sharon Hicks affair. We're talking about the corrupt PPP. Folks out there, thanks for pointing out about the sound issue. We do have these hiccups from time to time, but the guys have quickly adjusted. We're hearing about a slight echo, and we're going to try to rectify that as well. We don't want any echo. We're hearing about a slight echo, so we're going to try to rectify that as well. Good to have Marsha Batiste and Donna McCrae live and direct. Guys, as you come on, why don't you share the live stream? We want to see those emojis as well. We want to see the emojis. We know better to put it here. Good. And as I said, we do have with us Mr. Sharma Solomon, and we do have with us joining us very shortly. We're going to have Christopher Jones coming in to the podcast as well. And folks, the Sharon Hicks story, for just a quick recap, this Sharon Hicks affair. Sharon Hicks is the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs. And as you know, the police had set up a sting operation and caught the PS receiving bribes. Let me put allegedly in front of that, receiving bribes from a contractor. And it was reported widely in the media that the contractor said that he was being asked to give $200,000 per month. We know it's not Sharon Hicks alone. A lot of people got to pay kickbacks to this corrupt PPP regime. We know it's not Sharon Hicks alone. It's a lot of them. It's a lot of them doing a lot of foolishness in this administration, and they're getting up. Sharon Hicks is now going to be sent to the slaughter, right? Because the evidence is irrefutable. So Hicks is going to pay Paul is going to pay for for Hicks, and Hicks going to pay for all. So that is what we're discussing. The corrupt people. We knew it. We knew it was only time. Them and take long. Them and take long to get down to their old habits. Susan McDonald, they ain't take long. Gavin Liverpool, they ain't take long at all. Kim, Kim Myers, them boys ain't take long. Do share the live stream, guys. Wherever you guys are joining us from, Chisung Henry, and all you fantastic folks. I want to welcome Sharma Solomon, the one and only. We had him on our program in the ring last night, our affiliate program. And Sharma was on fire last night. He always got the facts. It's historical knowledge of the dealings of this PPP cabal. Sharma knows these issues at the back of his hands. Sharma Solomon, the one and only Sharma Rahim Solomon. Welcome to our podcast, Below the Belt. And I think it's your first time on the podcast, Sharma.
Okay, buddy, all right. Hi, good evening, good afternoon, Sharon. Sorry about that. Let me take this time to also say I am encouraged. I don't know if you're hearing me well, Sharon,
Hearing
but
you loud
I am
and clear.
very encouraged to be on this afternoon's program. Good afternoon to you all, Guyanese. I am not only encouraged to be on this program, but I'm also encouraged to share with you perspectives and insights on many of the observations that we see occurring in and around Guyana, and just what, as a people, we have to do to combat this sort of behavior by the People's Progressive Party, who holds the government of Guyana, and in essence, holds the people of Guyana at ransom and at hostage with regards to their policy. So, you know me, Sharon, I appreciate how we go to the core of the matter, but looking at it from that very open perspective of how policies are shaped and designed by the People's Progressive Party, it is one that promotes a kleptocratic sort of society where everybody feels a free-for-all and they can just take from government and do as they like. So I am encouraged to be given this opportunity once again, Sharon.
Thank you very much for being below the belt today. Sharma Rahim Solomon, it's great to have you on this side, sir. Were you expecting these kinds of not only revelation, but the return to this behavior that seems almost in the DNA of the PPP? Were you expecting them to return to their old nature so quickly, Sharma?
Sharad, no one should have expected any less. No one. And I don't think, even though we did not expect any less, I don't believe people are surprised. What we are actually recognizing, and let me take this to that policy sort of behavior of the People's Progressive Party. This is a government who refused to acknowledge those simple structures that allow for us to be able to have governance and the sort of governance in a liberal democratic society that brings about good governance. So when you look at things such as the Procurement Commission, you look at the Tender Board, you look at even the EPA and all of these structures that should ensure we have, and when you into sociology, Sherrod, there's a principle called the structure-culture relationship, that if these structures don't work, the culture that it promotes in our society is one where everybody believes that they can then rape the coffers, they can then take advantage of what we see as the systems of ensuring people get quality for work, and that we can hold people accountable for the actions that they take. And that is what you see currently happening. So to say if that would have been quickly eroded or not, the PPP is with a track record of over 23 years of governing Guyana, where they allow all of those structures to be eroded. And what we saw then was a culture of heavy corruption. So I don't believe it's one people should be surprised that what we're seeing now so quickly would be heavy corruption, because all of the structures, we look even in the area of the police force and law and order, whether it's at the level of the judiciary or even within the law and order section of the crime fighting in the police force. We heard what Paul Slow said with the Police Service Commission.
Yep.
So all of those structures, Sherrod, are now what we see manifesting themselves into a culture of corruption, into a culture where our communities, our society continues to witness this sort of abuse of power by not only senior government officials, but everyone who is part of that PPP structure in terms of its government.
Couldn't put it any better. And, Shami, we were talking last night on the affiliate program In the Ring about some of your own experience dealing with these duplicitous people. Your own experience as a leader in Region 10, your own experience as a leader nationally, dealing with them and how they always return to their base nature, which is corrupt, which is lies, which is misinformation. Talk to us a little bit about your experience dealing with these jagabats.
Well, let me put it this way. Our experiences are grounded on what is the most supreme instrument we go by, our constitution. The PPP has no regards for constitutional requirements. They have no interest in ensuring, as again, a liberal democratic state, that we pursue, that the Constitution is respected. So our own experiences that we acquired in Region 10, Sherrod, and this coming from a PPP government all the way of the 2006 election, where you had Samuel Hines, squatting in the seat of the member of parliament, not respecting the wishes of the court, dragging that election petition out, of which the petition vindicated that the PPP lost that seat and instead had Sam Hines squatting. But besides that, what did we inherit in 2011? We inherit a community, Sherrod, while getting in there as campaign manager and while being given the chance to serve as regional chairman. A community that was pinned against all of those rights constitutionally being violated. The right to have access to information unimpeded and uninterrupted, that's a right in the Constitution. The right to ensure that people are part of the decision-making process, that's Article 13 in the Constitution. All of those rights, to see the region have an economic program, is part of the Constitution. To see that people are not taken advantage of, including how resources are distributed. All of those rights, Sherrod, were being violated. And then the PPP came in 2012 with the most draconian measure to increase electricity by almost 1,500%, which again went against the rights of citizens to be a part of the decision of such a draconian measure that would have impacted significantly on their well-being, significantly on their economic outlook. So we taste the experience. And then further to that, Sherrod, further to that, when people choose to stand up, they chose to stand in defense of those rights. The PPP went further to violate their rights and take on an innocent, peaceful protest, where we see protests taking place right now across Guyana. The Sugar Belt protests constantly. But what did the PPP do? Unleash again, because they destroyed those structures in the police force. That the Commission of Inquiry noted that the police commissioner Leroy Bramell could not have engaged his commanders on the ground, but the Minister of Home Affairs was in contact and unleashed the police force to kill citizens. Again, violating the most sacred right, the right to life that is enshrined in our Constitution. So we know what the PPP brings, Sherrod. We experience what the PPP is about. And what they're about is constantly violating the rights of citizens, of Guyanese, and more so of our Constitution, that makes it a threat and a danger to every single Guyanese.
Yep. And you know, quite startlingly and hypocritically, I remember in that 2011 national elections campaign, these crosses, the PPP, these jagabats, accusing Granger of having blood on his hands. And even in the 2015 election campaign, and they went to Region 10 and shut down our young people. Sharma, recount for our listeners, for our viewers, this period of our history, and these jaguars who now come pretending that they're altar boys. Remind the viewers and listeners.
Well, Sherrod, I'll say this quite squarely. The people of Linden and Region 10 will never forget that moment. In fact, we have a memorial site in honor of those three martyrs, Shemrai, Alan, and Ron Somerset, who were killed, who were gunned down for exercising their right as citizens to assemble, to protest, as we see being done across the country. But on the decision itself, Sherrod, this was a minority Dana Rabatar government who ruled as if they had absolute majority one and absolute power without understanding the legitimacy is always with the people who give them that power, and they weren't given that power. So that decision was in itself what we did to that government in terms of where Region 10 in 2006, taking that seat back from Sam Hines and ensuring that we delivered 12,000 plus votes, while in Region 10 we had gotten 6,000 plus votes. We moved that number to 12,000 plus, given that. So you could have understood the sort of resentment that went into those decisions. And you had people for months saying to the government, this will not work. You've not created the economic space. You have not given Region 10 over the 23 years a chance to grow and develop, more so after you have destroyed the bauxite sector. There is no area that you could have pointed to, including job creation. So you could have seen the vindictiveness in that decision. But beyond that, Sherrod, the pleas of the people that said to the government, we will not pay an increase, not because we're unwilling, but because we were unable to pay that increase. And you saw, notwithstanding that, every effort made by the government to say to people, we will shut you up, we will deny you from the opportunity to speak in and speaking up. And this is where you saw the government unleashing the coercive arm of the state in the Guyana police force. And not only killing those brothers, not only killing those martyrs, but wounding and injuring people beyond the 18th of July and taking that as far as the 25th of August, the 25th of July, sorry, where people were shot in their homes. We have people like Randy Tello, who was shot in his jaw. We had Ray Wills, who today can't even walk because his legs almost got blown off. This was the most traumatic period for people in Region 10 and Linden. And that is why I'm saying to you, the government could come with all the facade and all the fancities. People will not forget that sort of aggression against a community that they fail to empower, fail to deliver, fail to respect the rights of every single citizen. And I'm saying this to you today, Sherrod. People understand what they're seeing in 1 year in terms of what the PPP is about. And I'll tell you this, people are taking note in order to know how they will respond, because they will not live with this sort of hardship. So looking at what occurred in 2012 and understanding what that meant going forward, I think it was only evident where we saw that in 2015, that momentum of people's discouragement from the PPP's behavior went right into an election victory, where Region 10 took that one seat from 2006 and moved it all the way to 19,500 votes in 2015. That sort of resentment will play itself out again, Sharon. I can assure you that.
Fantastic. Sharma, you know, what strikes us is how the PPP protects the Jagabats who are involved in all of these misdeeds. You know, you had the now installed AG with fraud charges for stealing law books. You had Ashney Singh with fraud charges. You had Winston Brassington there with fraud charges. You had the installed catfish Irfan Ali, 19 fraud charges. Khalid Singh at GCOM had private criminal charges brought against her. Since they come back, Sharma, you see the DPP dropping charges left, right, and center. No reasons given, no question asked. And that's just them aside. You got we have some other folks, Sharma, like Carl Singh, that Region 9 REO, who shot that young woman. You got Terichan Balgabin at the finance office there as director of projects. You got Zamal Hussein, Alicia Dalrymple. These names are infamous now on the annals of our country history. Faisal Jafar Ali, you got Dr. Hali, you got, and now Sharon Hicks. A whole set of people with a whole host of misdeeds being protected. And I said, and I see it again, it's only because Sharon's own, the evidence is so incontrovertible. We are proceeding to charge her.
Well, Sherrod, let me say this. I know Miss Hicks as someone who from Linden, from school, and I'll say this to you, that people will believe that they can take advantage of the systems and structures of government when there is a normalization of such a behavior, for the names that you call and for the matters that they were involved in, that notwithstanding where you come from, if the systems around you normalize that behavior, then you see it as an opportunity to take full advantage of such a system. And I think that is what the PPP is opening Guyana up to. For people to believe that they can take full advantage without accountability, with no transparency in place, to take advantage of not only the structures, but the people of Guyana at large. Because when you have, and only a few weeks ago, in fact, a few days ago, we had the issue of Corruption Day on the 9th of December, to be exact.
International Anti-Corruption Day.
So you understand, even the Americans, through the ambassador, is sounding the sort of strategic warning that, listen, corruption not only gives enrichment to a few, it hurts the poor, it hurts society. it takes advantage of not only the resources, but it takes advantage of the citizenry. So that is where I focus on, Sherrod. This PPP government have normalized the issue of corruption, have normalized the issue of lack of transparency, and now we believe in our society when we see these things unfolding, and you can call all those names, you can recognize all of those charges, you can recognize all of those issues, that we in a nonchalant way think that it's very normal and it's okay. It's not. Because I'll tell you why, Sherrod. When we are taking care of a few and we are seeing costs of living raising for the many, then you understand the importance when a single mother or an elderly person cannot get health care, cannot take care of their families when they look at bread prices gone up $100. So these people who are making the massive on the rip-off, the $100 and the $200 killing the average folks down on the ground. And we must understand then how important we have to pay attention to the process to see the lack of, or thereof no normalization of such practices that will end up hurting the society as a whole. So that is what the culture of the PPP have set for our state and our society, where people are hurting, but a very few feel satisfied that they're milking the coffers because they are normalized to do so.
And you know, as Christopher Jones joins the discussion, and you mentioned there, Sharma, what the American Embassy put out on International Anti-Corruption Day. The only reference they had about anti-corruption initiatives in the last perhaps 28 years was what was done under the APNU AFC, and in particular in the last 5 years. Because listen to what part of the press statement said. I want to read it for our listening audience. It says, and this is the press statement out of the American Embassy that Washington, D.C., Joe Biden and Kamala Harris approved. It says, in Guyana, the U.S. State Department Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs has focused on training and monitoring those in the criminal justice sector to build their capacity to fight corruption. In 2018, this is under the APNU AFC, the Guyana Public Service Commission was reconstituted after a 13-year hiatus. A 13-year hiatus. This is one of the guardrails of our democracy that the PPN had no time with. It went on to state that the government of Guyana also passed the Protected Disclosures Whistleblowers Act in 2018, which seeks to protect persons making disclosures from retribution from others. And we know how the PPP like retribution, the wicked, the vindictive.
Sherrod, we have never seen so many drug planes and so many drug busts and so many all the others in 1 year. Tons and tons of cocaine. Yep. That is the sort of environment of what corruption brings. And when you have that sort of corruption in such a scale, then how do the average business, the average small man competes when he's competing against that sort of international, transnational crime? That is what I think the report should also focus on, or should have also focused on.
Yep, totally agree. And Sharma, this Article 13 group also waded into the PPC administration. It is mind-boggling how these guys are going on. Absolutely mind-boggling. I want to quote part of their statement that they wrote on that International Anti-Corruption Day. They talked about, they said here, and I want to quote a part of it. Article 13 agrees with Ambassador Lynch in her identification of the role of institutions in the fight against corruption. The people don't like no institution that guards against corruption. Unless we establish, appoint, finance, defend, and hold responsible those institutions, it will be like whistling in the wind. Article 13 is satisfied that the country has enough constitutional and statutory mechanisms on the record. The Office of the Auditor General, the Procurement Commission, the Procurement Commission Tribunal are all provided for in the Constitution. The country's financial rules are set out in the Financial Administration Act and the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act and related subsidiary legislation. The PPA want here with none of this. They have not reconstituted Sharma, as you've articulated so eloquently. Lots of the commissions, so they can do as they please. They are corrupt.
No, Sherrod, outside of not reconstituting those commissions and not having respect and regards for our constitution, which is most sacred and sacrosanct, the fact of the matter is, outside of not doing those things, what you saw the PPP attempting to do last year, and compliments of Councillor Risedale, Ford, and persons in the opposition, is to ensure that they now make these agencies, which are budgeted for, not as semi-autonomous, and the government is pulling the financial purse strings, of which the court said it's an illegal act. So I'm trying to show you again, Sharon, not only that they don't have respect for the Constitution, not only that they don't have respect for constitutional agencies, but wherever the opportunity is given, they intend to control those agencies. They intend to ensure the officers of those agencies are not given the sort of independence they deserve by having them continue to act in those positions. That is the sort of control mechanisms that we see that the PPP is putting in place to ensure that Guyana as a society and all of those structures that you outline in terms of what will bring us good governance doesn't work, so that it promotes their narrow agenda of ensuring we have such a corrupt society that they can prosper. Just a few as opposed to the many.
Yep. Folks who are now joining us, you tune in to the Below the Belt podcast with yours truly, Sharon Duncan. And I have with me today the one and only Sharma Rahim Solomon, a national leader. Well known. I ain't got to even introduce Sharma to y'all. We're also trying to get the opposition chief whip, Christopher Jones, into the discussion, but we know he's having some trouble with Wi-Fi and data and all those. Folks, this is Guyana. Nothing runs the way it's supposed to run. And on top of that, you got these jagabats to deal with administrating. Things even worse. Sharma, where do we go from here? I mean, the late Lyndon Thorpe Sampson Burnham said that a charge is not a proven offense. And we know that Sharon Hicks is to be charged. Nigel Hughes always warns about charges and confessions and so on. He's always saying to let us take it easy. Let's wait to see when the case is tried and the evidence and that kind of stuff before we pronounce on it. Christopher Jones, jump in at the deep end, Chris.
Hi, good day, sir. You hear me clearly?
Yes, clearly. Yeah, go right ahead.
Loud and clear, cheers.
All right, great, thank you. So, because of my participation, I could not have followed the content of the discussion with yourself.
We're talking about the corrupt PPP.
Well, like us, we are currently sitting in the National Assembly trying to get some level of justification, trying to get some semblance of transparency and accountability that they like to speak of, but practice something completely different. That is a challenge.
Yep. So, Chris, I'm so happy that you're joining us from the sidelines of the debate happening there at the National Assembly. They come to try to hold the Guyanese people yet again for $26+ billion. You understand me? To finance them and the cronies. Sharma, jump in there. And Chris, jump in anytime.
So quickly on the issue of Ms. Hicks, like I think you're right in that. That's why I'm not focusing on the individuals. Mm-hmm. I'm focusing on the policies of this government that allow for the environment of such activities to occur. And I think you're right. We await the outcome of the courts. But let us not forget, it is the same individuals in the courts that are saying people with political sort of background may find it difficult to either get a fair trial or get a very easy or reasonable trial. So let us not forget that. But you made a point about what's happening in the National Assembly in terms of accountability. With you having a speaker prepared to deny the opposition, even the simplest what is outlined in the standing order, such as private bill, and to a private day, and allow citizens the opportunity to have their opposition representation be made on that day, is being denied. How can you then ensure that such a speaker will not be unbiased when it comes to the sort of scrutiny of coming back to Parliament for such large sums of money? How do you ensure the sort of oversight in such spending when you're unable to even utilize the day given to you so that you can present your case, much less to challenge the way the government is performing with regards to their spending? I think those are the challenges our members of Parliament face. Those are the challenges our parliamentary opposition face. And those are the challenges we must have to confront. And you ask how? We have to organize ourselves. And I think the PNC is demonstrating that as we move this Saturday to acquire new leadership. And I believe it is in that sort of acquisition of new leadership we can start to look at where we find the issues, identify them, and put the sort of solution to deal with them.
Yep. Chris, jump in anytime because I don't want to lose you.
Yeah, no, right there. And listen, fellas, let me just quickly give you this breaking news. So, earlier today in the National Assembly, while we are debating the two financial papers that have been brought, inclusive in that, had a lump sum allocation for Gaisuko of $3.888 billion. And of course, we start to scrutinize what is this money for? How could it not be foreseen? Because it cannot be considered, because the statement said that the monies are for operational purposes. Now, operational purposes for every entity, organization is standard, it's normal. And when you budget in for that, it is a normal procedure. So what was unforeseen? Because remember, these monies are coming from the consolidated fund, and there is stipulation as to how you can access funding from that. Is that it must be unforeseen, a natural disaster, whatever the case be. In this case, it is not so. So the $3.888 billion that they're seeking for Gaisuko, including monies for severance sugar workers. And of course, the opposition MPs took the minister task to justify how is this money is being paid to sugar workers who have been severance, when under the APNU AFC government, every single sugar worker that have been severance received their severance pay, fully paid, every single one of them. So we sought to get from the minister a justification. Under pressure, I would say under pressure from the opposition members of parliament, the minister said, and I quote, that the $250,000, and as I keep saying to you, Sharon, you quoted in this figure, the quarter of $250,000 that was paid to every sugar worker. That sum of money, the minister said, and I quote, that it was an election promise. That's what the minister said in the parliament. And that's the Minister of Agriculture. When we asked, how is this that these sugar workers are receiving what they call severance pay, when the APNU AFC government fully paid all sugar workers their severance, the Minister of Agriculture in the National Assembly this morning said, and I quote, that it was an election promise by the PPP to give sugar workers a one-off lump sum. So right off the bat then, there is absolutely no justification, and this could be challenged in court. There is this is not severance pay. So the government can't just go to the consolidated fund, draw down billions of the taxpayer dollars, and just decide that, listen, I gotta give sugar workers $250,000 each. I would want to give my friends them, and they say it does not work that way. But as I said to you, that is what the minister said in the House, that it was an election promise. That's why I'm telling you, when you speak about corruption, when we quoted that documentation last week as it relates to the statement out on corruption, they were speaking about Guyana. That is the reality what is happening in this country.
Wow. Sharma?
Yeah, Sharon. Like I said the type of regards that the government demonstrates with reference to how do they see the issues of our structures. So Parliament being one of the structures to give oversight of how the spending is being done. And this is the sort of blatant disregard for even the response to questions that we have, and the sort of line of reasoning that this government would expect Guyanese to accept. Now, take that same position, take that same justification and passion and compassion that the government is showing to sugar workers and apply that now to public servants. And this week, Sherrod, public servants are going to be going home with long faces because it's not 7, it's 3.7%.
Yeah.
And understand that it's going to be taxed.
Yep.
So you could only appreciate then, is there two Guyanas? Is this not one people, one nation, one destiny in terms of how people are going to be looked at? So public servants have been singled out for a different sort of treatment and a different sort of response on the issues that they should be looking at. And I want people to pay very careful attention to the motivations, to the understanding of the government. As Honorable Christopher Jones just mentioned, they can clearly say it was a political promise. It is not a justifiable understanding. So then the public servants doesn't have that political comfort. And this is what people should take note of just what the People's Progressive Party and their style of government is doing to the people of Guyana. They're dividing the country. They're dividing our people. They're being very divisive in how they allocate resources. And we can take that all the way to those cash grants, because those are things you're going to see coming out as they go back for supplemental budget and supplemental allocation in the Parliament, notwithstanding they would have made those requests at the last budget. So important for us to pay attention to that, Sherrod, and not lose sight that as you see more cash grants, as you see more flood relief, as you see more COVID distribution, those will not be equitably distributed.
More corruption.
As we see with regards to payment of severance and different increases.
More corruption. And it is just mind-boggling. I saw somebody in one of the comments say that you all shouldn't vote with them for this pay package. It doesn't matter if you vote for them or not. They're going to pass it because all you need is a simple majority to pass the supplemental budget. That's all you need. And they have the numbers. I'm eager to see whether Schumann, who has been beaten up by them consistently over the past few days and weeks, is going to vote with them. I'm eager to see that. But they have the numbers, even minus Schumann, to vote and to get this passed, whether we vote with them or not. I just want to be clear there. Chris, you want to jump in and give any more clarity there?
Right. No, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. And as I said, Sharon, is that, listen, my experience having covered the Parliament before the 10th, probably around the 7th, 8th, and 9th Parliament as a public relations officer for the PNC, is that this is how the PPP operates. The National Assembly, you will have some arguments being put forward by persons like the great Winston Murray, Derek Bernard, and so forth, Deborah Bakker, just to name a few. And they are strong arguments that you even see the PPP members agreeing with those arguments. But at the end of it, when it comes to the vote, as they always say, is that, listen, as an opposition, you will have your say, but we will have our way. And it's always been that way. And then that's what I want the Guyanese populace to understand, is that you will place these arguments in the National Assembly. Makes sense. And yet, still, when it comes down to the vote, the PPP will always go with the numbers that they have. Now, we spoke about the election promise, as the Minister of Agriculture stated. The National Assembly, this is in the Hansard of the National Assembly and will be part of the national records for all eternity in Guyana. The Minister of Agriculture said that the $250,000 that they paid out to severance sugar workers is not severance pay, rather it's an election promise by the PPP. Now the same PPP also promised public servants that they will give them a 50% increase in salaries. And then it was the same PPP by no less of a person than Bharat Jagdeo, who promised earlier this year, he said to the public servants that we would have already set aside $10 billion for public servants. And when it came down to crunch time, when they're supposed to make that payment, then you have the PPP minister said that, listen, that wasn't a promise, that was a Photoshop, insulting the intelligence of the Guyanese people.
Over and over again.
Even this, sorry?
Insulting the intelligence of the Guyanese people over and over again.
Exactly. But you see what the PPP is one of them old horse, that he believe he's still in the same stable. He realizes in 2021 and that you can't just hoodwink the people them. If people have access to social media, they have access to information. You could say something now and people can Google it to find out if you did indeed say that. This is the reality. So them
Yep, yep.
bluff and fluff that the PPP coming with and trying to insult the intelligence of the guy. These people can't work no more. People will not accept it. But you see, Sherrod, I mean, at times people have to go through some difficulties and challenge to realize where from whence you came.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
I
the
hear you.
argument that we were
Mm-hmm.
putting forward to this populace during those elections.
Mm-hmm.
Forward ever, backwards never, because under the APNU AFC government, this country was on a forward trajectory. You had no individual can speak about corruption in public office. You have public servants who every single year, they were guaranteed an increase in wages and salaries and realistic increases too. Right now, you got public servants who they've just foisted on them a 7%, which essentially translates into 3.5% for this year and 3.5% for last year. When they receive the salaries this month, some of them already received their packages. It says to them absolutely nothing, even though it was retro back to January. And then the people so damn wicked that they taxed it as well. They tax something that is already small and meager. They tax that too. So public servants aren't going away with anything. Public servants under this PPP administration is getting the full length of the shaft every
And that
single
inflation.
time. That is the reality what is happening in this country. It is a sad situation. And as many commentators said, this period, this PPP is the worst period and the worst they have seen of the PPP compared to the 23 years. This is the
Yep,
worst
yeah.
set.
I was
This
about
is
to say it feels like we
blatant.
done had 23 years of them already. It feels so in this
Exactly.
15, 18 months. It feels like 23 years
Exactly.
already.
Blatant disregard, disrespect, careless. People can't purchase a loaf of bread
Yep.
in Guyana,
Everything's sky high.
in an oil producing nation of Guyana. The average public servant can't buy a loaf of bread. You know how much Guyanese cooking less this Christmas? Because you can't even buy beef. Beef moved from $480 to $700 to now somewhere around $800 per pound.
Things tight.
Cooking gas has already gone.
Things tight.
It is
Things
a
tight, Sharon.
Yep. Tight.
and last
Tight.
but not least, what we are seeing here with these disbursements of billions of dollars, really and truly, it is the PPP having to pay those financiers that finance them during those elections.
Mm-hmm.
Billions upon billions of dollars have been plugged into the last general and regional elections that we had. Therefore, the PPP has to pay those financiers back plus interest. You look right now, our local contractors aren't getting those big contracts in this country or no contract at all. And then when you look at the person who has the contract, they happen to be Trinidadians. You have Trinidadian and
All right, Chris is gonna come. Is gonna come back in right away, and as we,
drivers.
yep,
Sorry, yeah, you have contractors who have the contract in Guyana from Trinidad. And as far as the drivers of the truck, the porters of the truck, the man who lay in the cement block, all of them happen to be Trinidad nationals. How could that be? And they speak, and the PPP speak about local content
yep.
and ensuring that the local contract, that is bare fluff. It is bare fluff. The reality is that we know financiers came from Trinidad and Tobago, many of which happen to be part of the opposition in Trinidad and Tobago, including some of those members of parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, opposition members that is, and a lot of businessmen from Trinidad and Tobago funded the PPP in the last election. And therefore, it is what you call reciprocity, that they have to be paid back. And that is why you see those huge contracts being issued to Trinidadians, plus they bring their people here because the PPP have to pay those persons back. That is why public servants can't get money, because the PPP wants to ensure that voting cash cow, which is called the sugar industry and the sugar workers, that they have to ensure that they keep them afloat, because that is where their votes came from or comes from. But when it comes to public servants, it's a different cat's a goose. And it speaks not only of the political discrimination in this country, but it also speaks about the racial discrimination in the country. When you look at the reality of the public servants in this country, the largest number of which happens to be Guyanese of African descent, it is no secret. And the PPP never liked public servants in this country, never did. You look at all of their successive budgets dating all the way back from 1994. You look at the allocations that were made to public servants since then coming to this year, 2021, and it is that blatant. And when you compare what they allocate to public servants as compared to what they allocate to Gaisuko, the writing is on the wall. It is blatant.
Yep, yep.
Blatant.
And
they
you
don't
know,
give a damn.
Chris, as you talked about the folks who are here working, or the foreigners who are here working, it's interesting to note. Somebody called me about picking up a barrel at one of the establishments of the wharf or somewhere there, and they said in the bond where they went, everybody's Venezuelan. That's what the person said to me. Everybody. He said barrels are being sent to the wrong addresses. Their barrel was sent to somebody, and they were trying to give them somebody barrel, but they said they cannot receive that because it's not theirs. Everybody, the member of the public who called us, said is a foreign national based on the language they're talking there, and this is what happens. This is what happens. So when they talk about creating 50,000 jobs, it's 50,000 jobs for who? That's the question one could ask. But folks, as we watch the program time, I have here with me Sharma Solomon, and I have with me Christopher Jones as well. And believe it or not, this is not a ticket, but I know they have the PNCR Congress coming up, the 21st Biannual Delegates Congress. And interestingly enough, Chris is running for vice chair and Sharma is running for chair. Interestingly enough. But before I lose Chris, because I know Chris there is on the sidelines of the sitting of the National Assembly to pass this $26 billion supplemental budget for them and their friends and the cronies. Chris, tell us a little bit about how the campaign is looking for Saturday before you run off.
Right.
And Sharm, I'm coming to you with the same question too.
No problem, Sharon.
Great.
Chris is good to go.
All right, so far the campaign is coming along quite nicely, quite smoothly. I have been for the past weeks reaching out to the various party groups and of course putting forward my platform. One thing I continue to say to all of the groups when I interact with them is that essentially I am not running because I don't see this for me as a competition because I don't see there's any winner or any loser. But essentially for me, because of my years of service to the PNC, is that I consider this that I'm essentially offering my services to the PNC. The platform that I'm running on, as I mentioned before, is that of rebuilding, retooling the GYSM, the youth arm of the party. Because what has happened in the past, and I mean being there for 23 years, you witness it over and over again. When it comes to an election, the youth movement or persons will approach you from the party seniors and be like, Chris, listen, you got to bring out the young people. You got to mobilize the young people. And then you do exactly that. You galvanize the young people, you energize the base, and you see across the length and breadth of this country, it is young people who lead the campaign. I can say without fear of contradiction that the 2011 election and the 2015 election, those election results is as a direct result of young people participation in the election campaign that resulted us the results that we've gotten. So for me, I want to be able to speak as a principal officer of the PNC, not just as a central exec member. Mind you, I have been on the central exec for 14 years now, but I want to be able to speak as a principal officer. Now, when I speak about ensuring the youth movement and young people in general is kept on the front burner of the PNC, I will be speaking as a principal officer. Whatever policies and programs are fashioned by the PNC, it must include those input from young people, from myself, who could guide them. Having been there for 23 years, the guy is saying is that if you live in a house, you are best able to say where it leaks, where the floor cracks, and so forth. So I've been there, and I know the issues that the young people are faced with. I know some of the challenges, and I know how to overcome them. I intend to, and as I have been doing, speaking with the immediate past members of the GYSF, the Laurelie Nesters, the Shiaza James, the Dennis Glasgow, the Mark Walks, the Peter Livingstone, the Natalie Gamble, the Wayne Masons. I mentioned Dennis Jiker and all the way there in FC Cribble Region 2. In Linden, there is the Vanessa Kisoon. There's my own brother who's sitting next to you, Raheem Sharma Solomon. There's Stacey Juke. There's Monica Hakshaw. You go to the quarantine, there's Crawford, and the list goes on. And then the intention too is to work with the current leadership of the GYSM. I say to people, and I say it without fear, is that the challenges that the current leadership of the GYSM is facing is not their fault. It's not their fault. I've been there. I know the challenge that they have. I said to people that it's the same current leadership of the GYSM. We're the young people who was part with me where we used to host those massive mega main green lime in Congress Place of Fire. It was the same young people who was with me every Friday afternoon when we host that public meeting on the Stabrook Market Square. It is the same young people who rally with me in 2011 when we rallied to make former President David Granger the presidential candidate of the PNC, then subsequently the leader of the PNC, and subsequently president of this country. It is the same young people, the Ryan Belgrave, the Susan Farnung, the Denroy Tudors, and so forth, and the list goes on. The intention is to work with those past and current members of the GYSM that immediately after this Congress, we commence the PNC's election campaign. Immediately after this Congress, is that we will funnel across the length and breadth of this country, establish and re-establish GYSM groups across this country and a program in place to sustain those groups as well. I made a commitment to all of the groups that I've spoken with, and I can make that commitment here on this program, that once elected vice chairperson of the PNC, a commitment that the GYSM will host its biannual delegates congress as early as July 2022. That is a commitment. But not only that, is that we will continue a program should at the leadership of the party, as a vice chairman, as a principal officer, is that we will ensure that the young people get the necessary resources that is necessary for them to sustain their group's operation. Training programs, as we have been doing, we host several youth leadership training programs at Camp Madawini. We did that time and time again. Those have to come back. The GYSM had their foreign affairs subject secretary, in which the GYSM was in constant contact with the Communist Party of China because of the relationship with the PNC. The GYSM had the relationship with the Cuban government as a result of the relationship with the PNC, the Cuban government. And those are the foreign exchange and so forth. And the list goes on. There was always a relationship with the PNM, the Trinidad's youth movement in Trinidad with the GYSM. We want to reestablish that. And similarly, the Jamaican youth arm as well as Barbados. We want to reestablish those. We want to be able to expose the young members of the party now in preparation for government. Because when we are back in government at the next election, is that the PNC must have a cadre of young people ready to take up office in every ministry, whether they're going to be permanent secretary, deputy permanent secretary, ministers of government, heads of boards, you name it. It's that we have to prepare the young people. I feel so bad over the years, as I mentioned, that we were always called upon to bring them out, energize them, bring out the young people. And when the elections are done, 2-3 months after, everything goes back to normal. It cannot be business as usual. You cannot sustain a political party with an operation like that with a youth movement. It has to be constant, sustain, and keep driving on the front burner. That is my commitment to the PNC, and that I put to the delegates of the PNC, and that is why I am part of the Congress. As I mentioned, I am offering that service. Last but not least, even though our resources as parliamentarians are limited, I commit to the PNC that I'll use those same resources to move myself and the committee members across this country, which will be at no expense of the party. So we'll be able to execute the work that is necessary in all of those regions across. That is the commitment.
Fantastic. Chris, thanks for being part of the podcast, just in case I lose you before we wrap up ultimately. Thank you so much, Opposition Chief Whip Christopher Jones, Member of Parliament.
Most welcome.
Sharma, how things going at your end with the campaign? How things going at your end, my brother?
Sharad, I can't complain. God is great. We've been doing quite well. I say to people in this campaign, the platform on which we are promoting the issues of the campaign, stands on the issue of experience, but an experience that allows for the bridging of those generations, the old and new generation of how things can and could be done to move our party forward. I have said this based on the experiences that we've acquired, that is all I bring to you as a candidate. Having been identified for the position of leader, chairman, vice chairman, and central executive committee member, and putting my hat in the ring for the position of chairman, I want to say to members and delegates that the experiences that we have acquired would become absolutely necessary
Mm-hmm.
on the issues that we see that are priority within our party at the moment. Those priority issues would first, for me, focus on the area of how do we build back the unity. The PPP, we mentioned over 1 hour, Sherrod, we talk about all the issues of the PPP. So there are many. There is a litany of issues of the PPP. But for us to take on the PPP, as we have done and demonstrated based on the experience that I've acquired, coming from 2011, challenging them in 2012, and defeating them in 2015, it is because we were able to do that as a united force. We have the experience on how to bring people together. We understand how to build organizations. We understand how to contribute to institutional strengthening.
Mm-hmm.
We know that at the level of building our groups back. So those will be priority areas to first have a united understanding of how do we bring the forces together. And in bringing those forces together, how do we then utilize that to ensure we strengthen such things as a secretariat that will ensure that the membership, the groups, are well organized on the ground, so that every area, like my brother Chris mentioned for the YSM, all the regions should then strive to have their conferences so that they're able to give legitimacy to the leadership that they want in those communities. And I see those things as short-term approach. But let us look at the medium-term approach. We have to ensure we get back to our stakeholders. We have to re-engage the members of the partnership. We have to understand where we are within the coalition and coalition government. We have to also bring to the attention of the nation, what do we see within those different stakeholders of our young people? And I like how Chris articulated that, of our women, of our elderly, of our disabled, but more so the institutions of unions. Where do we see those organizations and institutions at the level of the NDC, the RDC? Those are some of the stakeholdership that we will have to get back in so that we understand how our communities are working, how they're functioning, how they're being funded, how they're being treated. So those are some of we want to know how GCOM is working. We want to know about the election list. So in the medium term, in my quest for the position of chairmanship of the party, having looked at the issue of unity, having looked at strengthening the secretariat, having looked at engaging our partners and stakeholders, we then have to look within the longer term of maybe within that 6 months period of how do we allow the central executive of our party to establish those subcommittees that will ensure we pay careful attention to the oil and gas sector, those subcommittees that will ensure that we tap very nicely into our diaspora resources, not only for remittance, Sharon, but also how do we extract knowledge? How do we ensure that we use that knowledge? Instead of importing people from all around the world, we must be able to tap into the diaspora and allow Guyanese to know that they can come back home and where they can serve and serve well. So I believe that for us, it's important for us to have the opportunity to set up those subcommittees at the level of CC with technical people along with CC members to be able to give sort of recommendations. And the party should be putting out more white papers on these matters. So those are some of the areas as I put forward my candidacy for the position of chairman. I hope to bring that bridging of the divide. Guyana is still a paper economy, Sherrod. We saw Brigham Bondong. We saw Ivleri Bondong. And files and documents went up in flame. We need to move in the area of technology. We need to ensure that we have training for our young people to identify with the shortage that we see within our society to plug them in. So those are some of the recommendations to ensure, even with an active YSM, How do we train our next generation to move into the areas of being able to train for the employment opportunities available? So it may sound like a lot, Sharon, but what I bring to the delegates and bring to the membership is the experience of how we got it done in Region 10, how we were able to replicate that as early as this year, 2021, as we were going to communities such as Belladrum, Plaisance, and many communities across Guyana, speaking with our people, empowering them, and letting them know that we have a plan. We understand their needs, and we know how to get them beyond the point they are because we did it before, and we can do it again, Sharon.
Fantastic, Sharma. Sounds very, very comprehensive. Comprehensive. I love what I'm hearing, Sharman. We wish you all the best in your quest for chairman of the PNCR, as we wish Christopher Jones as well all the best in his quest for vice chair of the PNCR. The 21st Biannual Delegates Congress comes up on Saturday, the 18th of December at Congress Place and around the country. It's gonna be what you call it, a buy something biannual
It's going to be
Congress.
hybrid. People are going to be in person,
Hybrid.
and also we'll have technology to make that possible.
Folks, you all see Sharma sharp on the uptake. Thank you very much, my friend and brother Sharma Rahim Solomon, for joining the podcast today, Below the Belt. It's been my privilege, sir, having you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me on, Sharon. Thanks to your viewers and your listeners.
Fantastic. Guys, that's our program for today. That's our podcast for today. The man himself, Sharma Rahim Solomon. We have also with us Christopher Jones, the opposition chief whip, both vying respectively for chairman and vice chairman of the PNCR. Thanks again, guys, for being part of the podcast. Awesome, guys, and there we have it. Good to see so many of you guys as you hear. Share the podcast before you go. Share the podcast. We want to see those emojis as well. Good to see you, Carl Young, on the podcast, and Sean Archer, Esther Blue, and Paulette Graves, Donna Booker. I good to see Miss Skeet on the podcast as well, Samuel Mingo, and all you other fantastic, beautiful folks. Share the podcast before you go. And folks, hit that emoji button. Let's see how you guys are feeling out there. And guys, you know we cannot do this without your help. So come on board and partner with us. We're an affiliate program of the In the Ring program. We're an affiliate. So all of their platforms work here as well. It is the Cash App at Cash App. It's the $ in the ring 592 at the Cash App platform. It's a $ in the ring 592 at PayPal. It's in the ring 592 at gmail.com. Again, at PayPal. It is in the ring 592 at gmail.com. And then at MMG 6276963. At MMG, our number is 6276963. You guys can WhatsApp us at that number as well. We're also available via MoneyGram. We're also available via Western Union. It's been our privilege being here with you guys, and we're going to see you in the ring at 8 tonight. Thanks for joining us Below the Belt. Thanks for joining our podcast Below the Belt. We value each and every one of you. Who vex, who vex, lose. Thanks for joining us. See you guys this evening. Stay safe. Stay safe. And watch for the Jagabats. Stay safe, guys. We love you.